Imagine ancient traditions, forged over centuries, crumbling under a teenage emperor's whims. Rome, the eternal city, faced its most profound cultural shock. From the east, a young priest-king arrived, not with Roman gravitas, but in silk. His sacred cult, utterly foreign and bizarre. This was Elagabalus, a boy emperor whose reign ignited an inferno, pitting Roman virtues against unprecedented decadence and alien spiritual ideas. His accession wasn't mere leadership change. It was a direct assault on Rome's bedrock, a rebellion against everything the Republic represented. We explore today why his brief 4-year rule, 218 to 222 AD, became one of history's most scandalous Roman periods. The emperor himself, Rome's supposed defender, became its greatest defiler, openly mocking revered customs and ancestral gods. Historical records detail a deliberate dismantling of moral codes, a brazen excess that shocked even the capital's hardened citizens. The Senate watched in horror as Elagabalus's obsessions unraveled the social fabric, challenging military discipline and public decorum. His reign wasn't just eccentric acts. It was a seismic rupture, irrevocably altering Rome's spiritual landscape and setting dangerous precedents. Join us to explore how a boy emperor's defiance crushed Roman values and threatened to dismantle the very empire he inherited. The assassination of Emperor Commodus plunged Rome into a turbulent epoch, shattering the fragile peace of the Antonine dynasty. What followed was a brutal, dizzying carousel of power struggles, known to history as the Year of 5 Emperors. Legions across the vast empire, sensing weakness, began to nominate their own contenders for the imperial purple. From this chaos, a formidable figure emerged, Lucius Septimius Severus, a Punic general from Leptis Magna. His ascent was forged in civil war, a stark reminder that the true power now lay with the legions, not the Senate. Severus, a pragmatist and a warrior, understood this shift intimately, and he built his reign upon its foundations. His legendary dying advice to his sons echoed through the ages: enrich the soldiers and scorn all others. This philosophy, while securing immediate loyalty, irrevocably bound the emperor's fate to the military's whims. The cost of maintaining this allegiance was immense, draining the imperial coffers and elevating the army to unprecedented political influence. Severus's eldest son, Caracalla, inherited this military-centric model, but wielded it with terrifying brutality. He famously murdered his own brother, Gaeta, in their mother's arms, consolidating absolute power through fear and bloodshed. Caracalla's 212 CE edict, the Constitutio Antoniniana, granted Roman citizenship to nearly all free inhabitants of the empire. While seemingly benevolent, this grand gesture was primarily a pragmatic move to broaden the tax base for his increasingly expensive military. The line of succession, meant to be dynastic, was again violently interrupted with Caracalla's own assassination in 217 CE. Marcus Opellius Macrinus, a Praetorian prefect, usurped the throne, marking the first time a non-senator became emperor. His brief, illegitimate rule highlighted the volatile king-making power wielded by the Praetorian Guard and ambitious generals. But the Severan dynasty was not yet broken. Its formidable women possessed an unyielding grip on power and ambition. Julia Domna, the empress mother, and her shrewd sister, Julia Maesa, orchestrated a daring scheme from their Syrian homeland. They understood that Roman power, though outwardly brutal, often yielded to the perception of legitimacy and divine favor. Maesa, with audacious political acumen, presented her grandson, Varius Avitus Bassianus, as Caracalla's illegitimate son. This grand deception, coupled with strategic military bribery, swiftly swept aside Macrinus and reclaimed the throne for the Severans. Yet, beneath this veneer of imperial continuity, Rome's ancient foundations were slowly crumbling under the weight of military dominance. For centuries, Mos Maiorum, the ancestral custom, had been the unyielding bedrock of Roman identity and societal order. Values like pietas, Duty to gods, family, and state, gravitas, seriousness, and virtus, manly excellence, were paramount. The emperor, as Pontifex Maximus, served as the chief priest, protector of Rome's sacred rites and its traditional gods. Public morality, civic duty, and the established religious cults were not mere suggestions, but the very essence of Roman statehood. Any deviation from these deeply ingrained traditions was not merely a personal scandal. It was an affront to the divine order. The stage was thus set. A Roman Empire teetering on political instability, beholden to its legions, yet fiercely protective of its ancient soul. Into this volatile crucible, the young Elagabalus, an outsider from the east, would soon stride, ready to ignite a firestorm that threatened to consume Rome itself. His grand arrival in the Eternal City was not merely a journey's end. It was a seismic tremor, announcing the dawn of an utterly alien reign. Rome, the venerable heart of an empire built on tradition and stoic values, braced itself for a new emperor, a Syrian boy, still in his teens. But what unfolded was far from the expected succession. It was a cultural invasion, a direct assault on the very foundations of Roman identity. From the moment he set foot on Italian soil, Elagabalus began to dismantle centuries of established religious and social order. His primary devotion was to Elagabal, the sun god of Emesa, a deity represented not by an anthropomorphic statue, but a black conical stone. This wasn't just another foreign cult. Elagabalus declared it the supreme deity, elevating it above even Jupiter Optimus Maximus himself. Such a move was an unprecedented act of religious iconoclasm, a blatant rejection of the pantheon that had safeguarded Rome for a millennium. He immediately ordered the construction of a magnificent temple on the Palatine Hill, the Elagabalium, dedicated exclusively to his sun god. This grand edifice was designed to house the sacred stone, brought all the way from Syria, a physical manifestation of his radical agenda. To further solidify Elagabal's supremacy, the emperor mandated that all Roman cults and their sacred symbols be transferred to the Elagabalium. The revered Palladium, the sacred flame of Vesta, and other ancient relics were forcibly relocated, their significance absorbed into the new worship. Historical records from figures like Dio Cassius paint a vivid picture of the public's shock and profound unease at these blasphemous decrees. Elagabalus did not merely introduce a new god, he became its high priest, performing daily rites in spectacular, often shocking fashion. Adorned in elaborate flowing silk robes, painted eyes, and bejeweled tiaras, his appearance defied every expectation of a Roman emperor. He would dance and chant around the altar, leading grand processions through Rome's streets, guiding chariots pulled by white horses. These public spectacles, rich with Eastern sensuality and opulence, were designed to awe, but instead they profoundly alienated traditional Romans. His personal life was equally, if not more, scandalous, a direct affront to Roman morality and the sanctity of marriage. Elagabalus wed several women, including a Vestal virgin, a sacrilegious act punishable by death, yet he suffered no consequences. More controversially, he openly took male partners, reportedly even marrying one of his charioteers in a public ceremony. He adopted feminine mannerisms, desired to be addressed as lady, and allegedly offered immense sums for a gender-affirming procedure. These actions, documented in detail by ancient chroniclers, shattered the strict gender roles and sexual norms upheld by Roman society. The emperor's lavish banquets and public appearances were equally provocative, featuring exotic animals, strange delicacies, and decadent displays. He reportedly threw gold and jewels into crowds from high towers, an act of extravagance seen as both ridiculous and deeply insulting to Rome's gravitas. These flamboyant demonstrations, designed to highlight his divine favor, instead fueled rumors of degeneracy and un-Roman depravity. Expert analysis of the period suggests these performances were a deliberate, if catastrophic, attempt to impose a new cultural paradigm, The conservative Senate, bastion of Roman tradition, watched in horror as their emperor systematically undermined everything they held sacred. They saw not a ruler, but a petulant foreign boy priest, whose every action chipped away at the empire's dignity and stability. This dramatic defiance of established norms created an unbridgeable chasm between the emperor and Rome's most powerful institutions. The populace, accustomed to the solemnity of imperial rule, found themselves bewildered, disgusted, and increasingly fearful. The social fabric, woven from centuries of shared values and reverence for ancestral customs, began to visibly unravel under Elagabalus's reign. His radical reforms and scandalous behavior were not merely eccentricities. They were direct catalysts for the inevitable crisis that loomed. His ascension, once hailed by some as a new dawn, swiftly devolved into a spectacle of unprecedented depravity, shaking the very foundations of Roman governance. Elagabalus, barely a man, began to dismantle centuries of tradition with a childish yet potent disregard for decorum and meritocracy. Key administrative and military posts, once reserved for seasoned senators and veteran commanders, were suddenly bestowed upon charioteers, actors, and even barbers. This cavalier approach to governance signaled an immediate collapse of competence, eroding the intricate machinery that maintained the vast Roman Empire. The Roman Senate, accustomed to its ancient prerogatives, watched in horrified disbelief as their authority was not merely challenged, but openly ridiculed. But the political appointments were merely a prelude to the imperial court's descent into a maelstrom of sensual indulgence and public scandal. Lavish banquets, famous for their exotic dishes and rivers of wine, became stages for bizarre and often perverse performances, shocking even the most jaded observers. The young emperor reveled in these spectacles, often participating in ways that defied all Roman notions of imperial dignity and masculine virtue. Tales of his outrageous sexual proclivities and his frequent blurring of gender roles spread like wildfire, causing widespread consternation among the populace. These were not hidden indiscretions. They were public affronts, brazenly performed for the entire capital to witness, often involving prominent Roman citizens. Elagabalus delighted in humiliating the Senate, forcing respected elders to participate in his ludicrous antics or endure his sneering contempt. He bypassed traditional councils, made unilateral decisions, and filled the Senate with his sycophants, effectively stripping it of any meaningful influence. The venerable body, once the bastion of Roman law and tradition, found itself reduced to a rubber stamp for the emperor's increasingly capricious whims. Among the traditional Roman families, the custodians of ancient virtus and pietas, a deep-seated fear began to fester, mixed with profound indignation. They saw not just a bad emperor, but a force actively seeking to dismantle the very cultural and religious framework that defined Roman identity itself. Perhaps most perilously, the legions, the ultimate arbiters of imperial power, observed Elagabalus's reign with escalating disdain and thinly veiled anger. A warrior culture, steeped in discipline and martial prowess, could not reconcile itself with an emperor perceived as effeminate and frivolous. His disregard for military traditions, promotions based on favoritism rather than bravery, and opulent lifestyle clashed violently with their ethos. Even the Praetorian Guard, the emperor's personal protectors, whose loyalty was often bought, grew increasingly uneasy with his erratic and demeaning behavior. Their own standing and future within the imperial structure seemed jeopardized by an emperor who threatened the very stability they were sworn to uphold. His relentless promotion of the Syrian sun god Elagabalus, often accompanied by bizarre rituals, further alienated the Roman priestly class and traditionalists. Ancient Roman deities, venerated for centuries, were openly supplanted, their altars desecrated, replaced by a foreign cult perceived as barbaric. The direct consequences were catastrophic. Administrative chaos gripped the capital as officials navigated a labyrinth of shifting allegiances and arbitrary decrees. The imperial treasury, once formidable, was rapidly depleted by the emperor's extravagant expenditures, funding a lifestyle of unparalleled luxury and debauchery. Justice became a mockery, with laws bent and twisted to serve the emperor's personal whims or those of his favored, unqualified appointees. The people, initially captivated by the novelty, now felt a deep sense of betrayal, losing all faith in the divine right and competence of their ruler. External enemies, ever watchful, must have observed Rome's internal turmoil with growing interest, sensing a weakened, distracted empire ripe for exploitation. This was no mere misrule. It was a dramatic, unfolding tragedy, a real-life cinematic sequence of imperial decay playing out on the grandest stage. Each scandal, each outrageous act, chipped away at the emperor's legitimacy, eroding the very bedrock of Roman imperial power and stability. A sense of impending doom permeated the air, a silent question echoing through the marble halls. How long could Rome endure such a destructive force on its throne? The stage was now set for the inevitable confrontation, a desperate struggle to reclaim Rome from the depths of Elagabalus's scandalous reign. The imperial experiment with Elagabalus, driven by youthful folly and sacrilegious excess, had reached its terrifying crescendo. Rome, the eternal city, groaned under the weight of his bizarre innovations. Her ancient traditions openly mocked, her sacred institutions defiled. The Senate, once the bedrock of Roman governance, found itself impotent, its authority eroded, its members reduced to mere spectators of a grotesque imperial spectacle. But the patience of the Roman people, and crucially, the loyalty of the Praetorian Guard, was wearing dangerously thin. Whispers of discontent escalated into a roar of outrage as Elagabalus, in his final desperate acts, sought to elevate his lover to positions of unprecedented power. Historical records reveal a critical moment when his own grandmother, Julia Maesa, recognizing the existential threat, orchestrated his downfall. She shrewdly diverted the Praetorians' allegiance to her other grandson, the young and promising Severus Alexander. The Praetorian Guard, the emperor's supposed protectors, finally broke, their fury ignited by his audacious demand to elevate his lover. On March 11th, 222 AD, the unthinkable occurred. Elagabalus, along with his mother, was brutally hunted down within the palace walls. Their bodies were dragged through the streets of Rome, a horrifying spectacle of imperial reckoning, before being cast into the Tiber. This act, while barbaric, served as a stark, violent purge, a cleansing fire intended to expunge every trace of the disgraced emperor. With Elagabalus's blood washed from the cobblestones, the youthful Severus Alexander, a mere 14 years old, was proclaimed emperor. Under the astute guidance of his grandmother, Julia Maesa, and his mother, Julia Mamaia, a swift, deliberate restoration began. Every edict Elagabalus had issued was rescinded, every desecration of tradition meticulously undone, as if to erase his very existence. The sacred black stone of Elagabalus, the heart of the emperor's alien cult, was banished, and the venerable Roman deities reclaimed their rightful place. This rapid reversion underscored the profound resilience of Roman cultural identity, proving it was not easily swayed by imperial whims. The Senate, emboldened by the return to orthodoxy, briefly enjoyed a resurgence of its ancient dignity, its voice once more respected. Yet, the price paid was immense, not merely in blood, but in the further erosion of the Principate's mystique. The assassination highlighted the terrifying power of the Praetorian Guard, now established as kingmakers and kingbreakers. Expert analysis confirms this period deepened systemic weaknesses in imperial succession, setting a dangerous precedent for future generations. Elagabalus's disastrous reign served as a brutal lesson, a chilling precursor to the coming crisis of the 3rd century. Rome's cultural heart had held, But the fragility of the imperial mantle was undeniably exposed for all of history to witness. Elagabalus's brief, tumultuous reign serves as history's starkest warning, a cautionary tale of unchecked power and profound cultural defiance. His scandalous actions actively undermined the very foundations of Roman tradition, eroding the sacred trust between emperor and people. This imperial aberration foreshadowed a century of profound crises, revealing how quickly an empire's internal cohesion could fracture under the weight of personal excess and disregard for inherited values. His saga offers a profound historical insight. Even the mightiest empires are vulnerable when their leaders abandon the bedrock principles of duty and respect for national identity. Elagabalus stands as an enduring testament to the truth that history renders a harsh judgment on those who prioritize personal indulgence over the integrity and well-being of the state. His rule reminds us of the delicate balance required to maintain a civilization's greatness, a balance easily shattered by folly. If you found this epic deep dive compelling, please like, share, and subscribe to Echoes of Antiquity for more profound journeys into humanity's past.